Admiral Sun stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched his fleet die. The stars burned with the light of 1,000 exploding ships. They had come from the darkness between galaxies, and they had brought death with them. Their ships were black and twisted, like insects made of metal and hate. They moved in swarms so thick they blocked out the light of distant suns. Sun had commanded the Allied defense fleet for 15 years. He had fought pirates, stopped rebellions, and kept peace across 47 species. He had never lost a battle. Today, he would lose everything. "Admiral, the fleet is gone," his officer said. Her voice shook. "They are retreating. The command ship just went dark." Sun watched another wave of ships crash into his formation. They did not fight like normal enemies. They did not care about tactics or survival. Each ship flew straight at its target, firing until it was destroyed or until it rammed into its enemy. They were not soldiers. They were a swarm, a hunger given form. "How many have we killed?" Sun asked. "Approximately 800,000 vessels destroyed, sir." "And how many remain?" The officer was silent for a moment. Then she said, "Our sensors cannot count them all. Millions, perhaps tens of millions." Sun closed his eyes. The combined fleet of 47 species, the greatest military force in galactic history, had destroyed 800,000 enemy ships. And it meant nothing. They kept coming. They would always keep coming. "Order all surviving ships to retreat," he said. "Fall back to Prime. We need to warn the Council." 3 hours later, Admiral Sun stood before the Galactic Council. The Great Chamber was built to hold representatives from all 47 member species. Today, half the seats were empty. Some species had already fled. Others had been destroyed so completely that no one remained to represent them. Chancellor sat at the center of the high table. She was human, the first of her kind to lead the alliance. She was young for a chancellor, barely 50 years old, with gray starting to show in her black hair. Her face was calm, but Sun could see the fear in her eyes. Everyone was afraid now. "The fleet is destroyed," Sun reported. His voice echoed in the half-empty chamber. 90% losses. They are advancing on all fronts. At their current speed, they will reach the core worlds within 3 months. The chamber erupted in noise. Species shouted over each other in a dozen languages. Some demanded surrender. Others demanded retreat. The ambassador announced that his people were leaving the galaxy entirely, fleeing to a distant dwarf galaxy where they might never find them. Chancellor raised her hand. Slowly, the chamber fell silent. "Is there any weapon we have not used?" she asked. "Any ally we have not called?" "We have used everything," Sun said. "Every ship, every soldier, every weapon in our arsenal. They do not negotiate. They do not accept surrender. They simply consume." "Then we are lost," the representative said. He was a massive creature covered in thick scales with arms strong enough to crush stone. Yet he trembled as he spoke. "We should scatter, hide. Perhaps some of us will survive." Shook her head. "If we scatter, they will hunt us down one by one. Our only hope is to stand together." "Stand together and die together," another voice said. "What difference does it make?" The argument continued for hours. Listen to every voice, every proposal, every desperate plan. None of them would work. There were too many, too relentless, too alien to understand or predict. Finally, when the chamber had nearly emptied, and only the most stubborn representatives remained, an old voice spoke from the shadows. "There is one option we have not considered." Everyone turned. In the far corner of the chamber sat the keeper, the oldest of the elders. No one knew exactly how old the keeper was. Some said 1,000 years. Others said more. The keeper was small, withered, wrapped in robes that seemed older than most civilizations. "Speak," said. The keeper rose slowly and walked to the center of the chamber. Each step seemed to take great effort. "Long ago, when the humans first came to us, we were afraid," the keeper said. "We had seen many species join the alliance, peaceful species, logical species. species that understood cooperation and compromise, but humans were different. Frowned different how? They were predators, the keeper said, not like they who hunt for food. Humans hunted for sport, for revenge, for concepts they called honor and justice. They formed bonds with dangerous animals and called them friends. They consumed poisons for pleasure. They kept fighting when wounded, when dying, when all hope was lost. They frightened us. I am human, said. I am not so frightening. The keeper looked at her with ancient eyes. No, you are not. Because when humanity joined the alliance, we made them a condition. They had to become civilized, peaceful, safe. The dangerous ones, the warriors, the ones who enjoyed violence, they were removed. Removed, Sun asked. You mean killed? No, we are not murderers. They were given a choice. Exile beyond the galaxy or sleep. Most chose sleep. They believed they would be awakened if they were ever needed. The keeper paused. They have slept for 180 years. Stared at the old creature. You are saying there are other humans, dangerous humans, and you have kept them frozen this entire time. 50,000 of them, hidden on a dead moon in a dead system, waiting. Why did you never tell us? The keeper was silent for a long moment. Then the ancient creature said, because we swore never to wake them. Because some of us remember what humans were like before they were tamed. Because we feared them more than we feared anything else in the universe. The keeper looked at the burning star charts, at the advancing swarms, at the destruction of everything the Alliance had built. But perhaps, the keeper said, it is time to be afraid of something else. The ship traveled for 3 days through dead space. No stars, no planets, no life, just endless darkness and the cold light of distant galaxies. Chancellor stood at the window and stared into the void. Behind her, the keeper sat in silence, wrapped in ancient robes. Neither of them had spoken much since leaving Prime. How much further? Finally asked. We are close. The moon orbits a star that died long ago. No one comes here. No one remembers this place exists. Except you. Except me, the keeper agreed. I was young when the humans first arrived. I remember the fear. I remember the debates in the council. I remember when we decided that humanity must change or be rejected. The ancient creature paused. I also remember the humans who refused to change, the ones who said they would rather sleep forever than become something they were not. Turned from the window. And you think these sleeping humans can save us? 50,000 soldiers against millions of. I do not know, the keeper admitted. But I remember what humans were capable of, and I remember why we were so afraid. The ship found the dead moon 2 hours later. It was a small, gray rock orbiting the remains of a collapsed star. The surface was covered in dust and ancient craters. Nothing had touched this place in almost 200 years. They landed near a mountain that looked natural but was not. Deep inside, hidden beneath a kilometer of rock, was a vault that the Alliance had built in secret. A vault designed to hold the most dangerous creatures the galaxy had ever known. Sleeping humans. The doors were massive, made of metal that could survive a nuclear blast, entered the codes that the keeper had given her. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the doors began to open. The vault was cold and dark. Rows of cryogenic pods stretched into the distance, thousands of them, each containing a single human body frozen in time. Frost covered the glass. Status lights blinked green, showing that the occupants were still alive after nearly 2 centuries. Walked between the rows, reading the names on each pod. Park. Names from old Earth, from a time before humanity spread to the stars. These were the last warriors of a species that had been forced to forget how to fight. Wake them, said. The keeper hesitated. Chancellor, you must understand what you are doing. These humans are not like you. They were soldiers, fighters, killers. They volunteered for this sleep because they refused to give up what they were. They may be angry when they wake. They may be dangerous. They are destroying everything, said. How much more dangerous can these humans be? The keeper did not answer, but the ancient creature's hands trembled as it activated the revival sequence. The first pod opened with a hiss of escaping gas. Inside was a man in his mid-30s, tall and muscular, with short black hair and a face that looked like it had been carved from stone. His eyes opened. For a moment they were confused, unfocused. Then they locked onto with an intensity that made her step back. "Where am I?" the man asked. His voice was rough from nearly 2 centuries of silence. "You are in the vault where you were placed to sleep. My name is, I am the Chancellor of the Galactic Alliance, and you are Captain Park, formerly of the Earth Defense Force." Sat up slowly. His body was stiff, but his movements were controlled, careful like a predator waking from rest. He looked around the vault, at the other pods, at the frost and the darkness. "How long?" he asked. 180 years. Was silent for a long moment. His jaw tightened. His hands became fists. Could see the anger building in him, cold and dangerous. "You froze us," he said. "You told us we were too violent, too dangerous. You said we were monsters who had no place in your peaceful galaxy, and now you wake us up." His eyes found hers. "Why?" "Because the galaxy is dying," said. "Because an enemy has come that we cannot defeat. Because 47 species are being destroyed and no one knows how to stop it." "And you think we can?" "I think you are our only hope." More pods were opening now. Men and women climbed out, shaking off the cold, looking around with the same confusion and anger that had shown. They gathered around their captain, waiting for orders, waiting for an explanation. A woman with short hair and sharp eyes stepped forward. Her pod had been labeled Combat Medic. She looked at with an expression that was not quite hostile but very far from friendly. "You want us to fight your war," said, "after you locked us away like animals." "Yes," said simply. "I am not going to pretend that what was done to you was right. I am not going to make excuses. I am only going to tell you the truth. An enemy called thee is destroying everything. They do not negotiate. They do not stop. If we do not defeat them, every living thing in this galaxy will die." "And if we refuse?" asked. "If we decide to go back to sleep and let your peaceful galaxy burn?" Met his eyes without flinching. "Then I will close this vault and let you sleep forever. I will not force you to fight, but I am asking you, I am begging you, please help us." The sleepers looked at each other. A large woman named cracked her knuckles. A young man named smiled a smile that had no warmth in it. A young woman named, barely 20 years old when she was frozen, checked her hands as if looking for a weapon that was not there. Finally spoke. "Show us this enemy," he said. "Show us what you need killed." And for the first time in 180 years, the galaxy's most dangerous predators were awake. The Alliance gave the sleepers everything they asked for: weapons, ships, armor, technology that had been invented while they slept. The sleepers took it all and made it better. An engineer watched in confusion as Sergeant took apart a fusion rifle that had taken 20 years to design. She rebuilt it in 2 hours. When she was done, it fired faster, hit harder, and weighed less than half of the original. "How did you do that?" the engineer asked. "You built it to be safe," said. "I built it to kill things." "But the heat management system, the safety protocols, the automatic shutdown if the weapon is damaged." "I removed them." "But what if the weapon overheats? What if it explodes in your hands?" Shrugged, "Then I use my other hand." The engineer walked away and did not come back. Similar scenes played out across the Alliance. The sleepers did not think like normal soldiers. They modified their armor to allow movements that would break bones, because sometimes a broken bone was worth the advantage it gave. They removed the pain limiters from their medical implants, because pain was just information and they did not want to be distracted by their body's complaints. They trained for 20 hours a day, slept for 3, and complained that they were getting soft. The other species watched with a mixture of awe and horror. This was what humanity had been before the Alliance tamed them. This was what had been sleeping in that vault for almost 200 years. 3 weeks after the sleepers woke, the first real test came. A swarm had trapped a convoy of refugee ships in the Helix sector. 50,000 civilians from 6 different species, including 10,000 children, were going to die unless someone saved them. The Alliance sent 10,000 soldiers to try to delay the long enough for the refugees to escape. Captain asked for 500 humans and permission to win. The Alliance commanders thought he was insane. The swarm numbered over 200,000 soldiers. They had already destroyed 3 Alliance defense stations in the sector. Sending 500 humans against them was suicide. Smiled, it was not a nice smile. Just watch, he said. The battle began at dawn on a small moon where the refugees had taken shelter. They landed in waves, thousands of twisted creatures pouring out of their ships like black water. They felt no fear. They felt no pain. They had never lost. They had also never fought humans. Private found a position on a narrow cliff that overlooked the main landing zone. There was no cover, no protection. Any sensible soldier would have called it a death trap. Was not a sensible soldier. She was a sniper who had been asleep for 180 years, and she was very, very angry. She started shooting. Her first shot killed a commander. Her second killed another. By her 10th shot, they had figured out where she was. By her 50th shot, they had sent 200 soldiers to kill her. Did not move. She did not hide. She kept shooting. When they reached her position, she pulled out a knife and kept fighting. When they broke her arm, she switched hands. When they knocked her down, she got back up. By the time reinforcements reached her, had killed over 300 soldiers. She was covered in blood, most of it not her own. Her arm hung at a wrong angle. She had a piece of metal sticking out of her leg. "Are you okay?" a medic asked. "I am fine," said. "Where are the rest of them?" Across the battlefield, similar stories unfolded. Corporal volunteered to infiltrate the main hive ship alone. When asked why he thought he could succeed where entire teams had failed, he said, "They will not expect just one person to be stupid enough to try." He was right. They had no protocols for a single enemy walking into their ship, planted explosives in their engine room, their ammunition storage, and their command center. Then he fought his way back out, killing everything in his path. The hive ship exploded 20 minutes later. Walked out of the blast zone with burns on his face and a hole in his shoulder, carrying a skull as a souvenir. Lieutenant ran the field hospital. When soldiers broke through the perimeter and attacked the wounded, she did not run. She picked up a surgical laser meant for cutting bone and used it to cut something else. "You are a medic," a shocked soldier said afterward. "Medics do not fight." "Human medics do," said. "We protect our patients." The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the swarm was destroyed. All 50,000 refugees were saved. The 500 humans had taken 73 casualties, mostly wounded. Not a single human soldier had retreated. News of the battle spread across the galaxy in hours. Species that had dismissed humanity as weak and peaceful began to remember the old stories, the warnings. The reason the Alliance had been so afraid of humans that they locked the dangerous ones away. The hive mind analyzed the battle data. For the first time in its long existence, it felt something it did not understand. The humans called it fear. They would learn to call it that too. 50,000 humans could not win a galactic war alone, but they did not have to. They just had to teach everyone else how to fight like humans. Captain stood before 10,000 Alliance soldiers from a dozen different species. They were the best warriors their people had to offer. They had trained for years. They followed protocols that had been refined over centuries. None of it had worked against the. "Forget everything you know," said. "Your training taught you to fight enemies who think like you. They do not think like you. They do not care about survival. They do not retreat. They do not negotiate. They are a swarm, and the only way to beat a swarm is to be more dangerous than they are. A soldier raised his hand. He was huge, covered in thick scales with muscles that could crush steel. We are already dangerous. They are the strongest warriors in the alliance. No, said. You are the strongest. That is not the same thing. Strength means nothing if you stop fighting when you are hurt. Strength means nothing if you run when things look bad. Strength means nothing if you are not willing to die to protect what matters. He pointed at Sergeant, who was sitting nearby with her arm in a cast. She had broken it in 3 places during the last battle. She had refused to stop fighting until the battle was over. That woman has broken more bones than most of you have ever had injuries, said. She keeps fighting anyway. Not because she does not feel pain. She feels it. She just does not care. Pain is just information. It tells you something is wrong. It does not tell you to stop. The training was brutal. The sleepers did not believe in rest days or easy exercises. They pushed the Alliance soldiers until they collapsed, then told them to get up. They taught them to fight through injury, to ignore fear, to keep moving forward no matter what. Some soldiers quit, some died during training, but those who survived became something new, something dangerous. 3 months after the sleepers woke, the Alliance launched its first major offensive. Captain led a strike force of 2,000 soldiers, half human and half Alliance, to attack a breeding world. Intelligence said the planet produced millions of new soldiers every month. Destroying it would cripple the enemy's ability to replace losses. The mission was rated as impossible. The planet was defended by a fleet of 50,000 ships and ground forces numbering in the tens of millions. Alliance commanders said that even reaching the planet would require losing 90% of the strike force. Said that sounded about right. He went anyway. The battle was the largest single engagement of the war. Ships punched through the fleet in a formation that no sane commander would have used, sacrificing escorts to protect the troop transports. When his flagship was hit by 3 enemy ships at once, he ordered the crew to abandon ship. Then he crashed the burning flagship into the planet's main defense station. Survived the crash. He climbed out of the wreckage with burns on his face and a broken rib and led the ground assault personally. For 16 hours, he fought without rest, without food, without stopping. When soldiers asked him how he was still standing, he said, "I will rest when the mission is complete." The breeding world was destroyed, lost half his force. He called it a victory. Across the galaxy, similar battles raged. Lieutenant led a mission to capture a commander alive. Everyone said it was impossible. They were connected to a hive mind. They died rather than surrender. Individual had no concept of being alone. Did not care about what was possible. She captured the commander by knocking it unconscious before it could choose to die. Then she did something no one expected. She talked to it. For 3 weeks sat in a cell with the commander. She did not torture it. She did not threaten it. She just talked. She told it about humanity, about love and loss and sacrifice, about why humans kept fighting when all hope was lost. The commander did not understand at first. Its mind was connected to millions of others. It had never been alone. It had never had to think for itself. But slowly something changed. "Why do you not fear death?" the commander asked one day. Thought about the question. "We do fear it," she said, "but we fear other things more. We fear losing the people we love. We fear failing to protect the innocent. We fear living a life without meaning." She paused. "You consume to survive. We survive to mean something. There is a difference." The commander was silent for a long time. Then, for the first time in the history of the species, a single unit disconnected itself from the hive mind. It chose to be alone. It chose to think for itself. It chose to ask what its life meant. The hive mind felt the disconnection like a wound. One unit among billions should not have mattered, but it did matter, because if one could choose to leave, others might follow. For the first time, they understood that they might lose this war. And they were right. The final battle came 1 year after the sleepers woke. There was a dying planet in a dying system, a cold, dark rock orbiting a star that had nearly burned out. This was where the hive mind had been born 1 million years ago. This was where it would make its last stand. The Alliance fleet arrived with every ship it had left. 3,000 vessels carrying 2 million soldiers from 43 species. They faced an armada of 10,000 ships and a planet covered in billions of defenders. Chancellor watched from her command ship as the battle began. She had not slept in 3 days. She had not smiled in weeks. So many had died to reach this moment. So many more would die before it was over. Captain led the ground assault. Of the original 50,000 sleepers, only 12,000 remained. The others had died in battles across the galaxy, giving their lives to turn a hopeless war into a winnable one. They did not hesitate now. They dropped onto the planet's surface in pods that burned through the atmosphere, landing in the middle of enemy territory. There was no safe landing zone. There was no backup plan. There was only forward. Lieutenant held a mountain pass for 16 hours. Her leg was broken in 2 places. She had run out of ammunition after 8 hours and had taken weapons from dead enemies. She had been stabbed, shot, and beaten. She kept fighting. When reinforcements finally reached her, they found her sitting on a pile of bodies, calmly wrapping a bandage around her arm. "How many?" the squad leader asked. Looked at the bodies around her. She had stopped counting hours ago. "Enough," she said. Sergeant led a charge into the main fortress. She had been wounded in the first wave of fighting, a piece of shrapnel in her stomach that should have killed her. She refused medical evacuation. She refused to stop. She carried wounded soldiers on her shoulders while still firing her weapon. When she finally collapsed from blood loss, she was still crawling toward the enemy. Captain, the man who had once walked into a hive ship alone, was given the most important mission of the battle. He had to reach the central node of the hive mind and destroy it. Without the node, the hive mind would shatter. The billions of soldiers would become confused, disconnected, alone. Fought his way through kilometers of enemy tunnels. His squad died one by one until he was alone. He was wounded in a dozen places. His armor was destroyed. He had lost so much blood that he could barely see straight. But he reached the node. It was a massive organic structure, pulsing with the thoughts of 1 billion minds. Soldiers surrounded it, protecting it with their lives. Had one explosive charge left, one chance. He looked at the detonator. He could set it for 0 seconds, press the button and die instantly, guaranteeing the mission's success. Or he could set it for 30 seconds, try to escape, risk failure. Thought about everyone who had died to get him here. He thought about his friends in the vault, frozen beside him for nearly 200 years. He thought about what humanity had sacrificed. He set the timer for 30 seconds. Then he ran. The explosion shook the entire planet. The hive mind screamed as billions of connections were severed at once. Across the galaxy, soldiers stopped fighting. They stood frozen, confused, alone for the first time in their existence. Was found 3 hours later, buried under rubble at the edge of the blast zone. He was barely alive. Both his legs were gone. His face was burned beyond recognition. But he was smiling. The war was over. On Prime, Chancellor addressed the galaxy. Behind her stood Captain, Lieutenant, and the other surviving sleepers. 12,000 had become 4,000. 8,000 had given their lives for a galaxy that had once locked them away like monsters. "Today, we celebrate victory," said, "but we also remember those who gave everything to make this moment possible. The sleepers were humanity's forgotten children. We locked them away because we were afraid of what they were. We told them they were too violent, too dangerous, too different to live among peaceful species. She paused. Her voice was thick with emotion. We were wrong. These humans did not fight because they loved violence. They fought because they loved us. They gave their lives for species that had rejected them, for worlds they had never seen, for people they had never met. They are not monsters. They are heroes. The chamber erupted in applause, but did not hear it. He had already left. He stood before a memorial wall that listed the names of every sleeper who had died. 46,000 names carved in stone. Friends he had trained with. Soldiers he had led. A family that had been frozen beside him for almost 2 centuries. Lieutenant found him there, staring at the names in silence. "Do you regret it?" she asked, "waking up for this?" Touched a name on the wall. Sergeant Lee, his best friend. They had been frozen in pods next to each other, making jokes about who would wake up first. Had died in the 4th month of the war, holding a bridge so that refugees could escape. "No," said, "we were always meant for this, to stand between the darkness and everyone else, to fight so others do not have to." He lowered his hand. "We were never monsters, we were just waiting to be needed." Across the galaxy, the story of the sleepers spread. Species that had feared humans learned a new truth. Humanity's capacity for violence was not separate from their capacity for love. It was the same thing, pointed outward, made into a shield. The humans were still feared, but now they were also thanked. They were also honored. They were also loved. And they would never be locked away again.